people, how have you been? My name is Kathleen, I'm Brazilian, and I love talking about books. And today I'm here to tell you a little bit about my experience while reading the book. I will say the name in Portuguese because it's the original name and then I will translate it. Okay, the name in Portuguese is Cheguei ao Brasil, which is arrived in Brazil. Like the literal translation is arrived in Brazil. This book was organized by Danilo Rodrigues Bezerra, is the name of the person who organized the book. And this book is a collection of short stories narrated by people who came from other countries and decided to live in Brazil. People who became Brazilian residents by choice. And it's a very, very interesting book. I hope you can, have access to it. I don't know if it's been translated, but they are the stories of, let me see how many people, because I didn't memorize the name, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people. So 9 people told their stories of how they came to Brazil, like how did they decide to come live in Brazil and have a different life and leave their home country behind, and leave their home country behind? Like, why did they decide to immigrate? And I will tell you a little bit about their stories, where they are from, and why did they come to Brazil. Okay, I will make a summary of these stories, but I hope that if you have like access to the book, you can, and you don't speak Portuguese, you can use an AI to translate it for you nowadays. Like AI is very good in translation, so you can point your Google Lens to the page and your Google Lens will read the page. The page is written in Portuguese, but if you point your Google Lens to the page, it will translate into English for you, or it can read it in English for you. It will translate and read out loud in English. So Google Lens is very nice, a very nice tool you can use to translate text into your language if you don't speak Portuguese. Or you can use another AI, like another software, another like translation software that it's okay. If you think the book is interesting and you don't speak Portuguese and you can't find the translation into English already done, you can do it yourself with your AI of choice, okay? So the first person here is Eva Maria Eich. I don't know. She is from Germany and I don't speak German. And she is already an elderly. She's 70 years old and she came from Germany to Brazil after the Second World War because at that time, Germany was was completely destroyed from the war. And even though she was not Jewish, she and her family, they were not Jewish, they were also affected by the war because they didn't have food. They didn't have like a place to work. They didn't have a place to live. Even though the war had ended, when her mother, she was a little kid. She was, I think, about 8 years old when her mother decided to come to Brazil. But yeah, it was a disaster. It was a catastrophe. Like nothing in the country was working. They couldn't find jobs. They couldn't find food. They didn't have a place to live anymore. Most of the houses were destroyed by, airplanes who threw bombs there. So this is the reason why she came to Brazil. Like her mother decided to leave Germany behind and come live with her parents because Eva's grandparents already lived in Brazil and her mother lived in Germany, but then she decided to come to Brazil to live with her, Eva's mother decided to come to Brazil to live with her parents, so Eva's grandparents. And she's living in Brazil up to nowadays. Since that time, like she fell in love with Brazil when she was little. She felt very welcomed. You know, everybody who told their story here says that they felt very welcomed, that Brazilian people in general receive foreigners very well, and that's true. You know, usually we are very curious about people from other countries, and we receive people from other countries very well. We are very excited. So, yeah, she felt welcomed, and she ended up falling in love with the country, and she still lives in Brazil. I think it's a nice thing that she could find a new home after her, like the city she's from was destroyed by the war. So I feel a lot for anyone who had their lives affected by war, because usually the people who are affected are not the people who decide to start the war. Usually, like the politicians, they start wars, but they usually are not affected by the war, like not directly. You know, usually it's the common citizen who is like affected the most, which is very sad. And this happened to Eva and her family. And the second person who narrates like why he decided to come to Brazil is Jorge Vélez. He's from Argentina. And in his case, it was totally different. He was just a tourist. He was traveling around South America. He went to Peru. What are the other? Colombia, I think. Like he was traveling around South America, and he wanted to cross the Amazon River by boat. This is a very famous trip people make here in Brazil. Like you can go to the Amazon part that is not in Brazil, because the Amazon forest like extend to different countries. The biggest part is in Brazil, but there are parts in other countries, so you have to go, I think, to Bolivia, I guess, to get a boat and then start crossing the river, and you continue crossing the river through Amazon in Brazil until you get to Manaus, which is a city in the Amazon state of Amazon, like in the state of Amazon, not the forest itself, but Manaus is a city in the state called Amazon. Okay. Yeah, because we have the forest. Yeah, I don't know if you know that, but we have the forest called Amazon, and we have a state in Brazil that is called Amazon. Actually, we call it Amazon. Yeah, it's the same name. Yeah, it's the same name. So, you know, he was crossing that, and then he decided to travel around Brazil. He went to Bahia and other states, and then he arrived in Espírito Santo, which is a state in Brazil. And when he arrived in Espírito Santo with all the beaches, he arrived in Vitória, which is a city on the coast with a lot of cities, and then he fell in love with a lot of beaches. So he fell in love with the nature there and the view. He loved going to the beach to swim, so he fell in love with the place and decided to stay in Brazil. So he didn't have the intention to leave Argentina. He was just a tourist, like doing his like tourist things, but then he fell in love with the country and never went back home. So he just stayed and then found a job and then got his visa, and then he was staying and he's still living in Vitória in Espírito Santo. Okay, and then the other person here, person number 3 in the book, is Irina Tumilovic. This is Irina. She is from Belarus, and she came to Brazil to try to have a better life, because she was born when Belarus was still part of the Soviet Union. And when the Soviet Union ended after the Cold War, the country separated and Belarus became like, it's like a country. but it was still a socialist country, and she felt like she didn't have a lot of opportunity. She couldn't choose where to study, she couldn't choose her job. Everybody had this like almost the same salary, but it was like a really bad salary for everybody. Everybody was in quotation marks and a lot of irony, everybody was equal, but the problem is that everybody was equal being poor, you know what I mean? So the situation there was bad, and then she started researching like where could she go. And if I'm not mistaken, the reason why she chose Brazil is because she met her husband, and her husband ended up being a Brazilian. So she met this guy and she started dating him, and he was Brazilian. So she already wanted to move from Belarus. She worked a little bit in Russia, but then she didn't want to continue being there, and then she decided to move. And then she met this Brazilian guy and decided to come to Brazil with him, and she fell in love with the country too. She talks about a lot of like cultural differences. For her, it was difficult to adapt to all the cultural differences. Like, you know, comparing her country, her homeland to Brazil, like our habits are very different, like our culture is very different from what she was accustomed to. So it took her a while to understand everything, and she still thinks like there are some details that she mentions, like how in Brazil even like elderly, like even elder people who live in simple homes, who are like normal people who are not rich, can pay for like someone to go and clean the house, because in Brazil services are not very expensive. To pay for someone to clean your house is not very expensive. So this is negative for people who work with services like cleaning and everything, but it's also positive for the rest of the population. Like if you have a little bit of money, you can pay someone to come and clean your house like once a week. You know, it's a very common thing here in Brazil. You don't need to be rich to have someone to hire these kind of services, you know. And for her it was very shocking, because in Belarus only like super rich people could afford like paying someone to do like cleaning services for you. And mainly she talks about the freedom to choose to do things, you know. That was the biggest difference for her. She felt free here, free to choose, like to choose what she wants to work with. Even though we all know that in Brazil we still have a lot of poverty, we still need to improve that, we still need to work on like safety and, you know, poverty. We need to decrease that, but at the same time we are 200 million people, like we are over 200 million people. And you know, sometimes compared, depending on the country you compare with, we have way more freedom and way more things than in many countries. You know, we have a national healthy system. Like, you know, you can go to the doctor and not pay anything, you can go to the hospital and not pay anything. Yeah, it's not perfect, we need more investment on it, because I think the biggest problem here in Brazil is that the population is gigantic. We are so many people, so sometimes even though we have like free hospitals and free doctors, we don't have enough of them. We need more, and we need more infrastructure. But the good side is that you don't have to go bankrupt to go to the doctor. You know, like you go to the doctor and you are usually you are treated, you know, most of the things you can do. Only if it's something that is not life-threatening, then you have to wait like in line, not in line like physically, but you have, to fill a form and send to the system, and then the system will like take a while to get to you, because but it's also not very expensive to pay for private healthcare here too. Like I have health insurance here, so I go to private hospitals, and and I'm a teacher. And I can afford health insurance in Brazil. Yes, services, even though it is expensive for many people, it's not some like private health system is not for the millionaires here in Brazil. Like you can be a teacher and be able to pay for your health insurance, and sometimes even with health insurance I can also use, in case I need, the free health system too. If I want to go to a family doctor, in my neighborhood there are 3 public clinics, and these clinics, they have dentist is for free, the dentist is for free, the family doctor is for free. There is always 1 or 2 nurses for free there. For example, if you want to get a vaccine or an injection, you can go there, and there is always 1 or 2 nurses who can give you the vaccine or give you the injection for you for free. Family doctor is usually from Monday to Friday, any day. Depending on the clinic, you can just go and wait in line. And here beside my house, you have to schedule the appointment, so usually takes 5 days. For example, if I go on Monday, maybe I will be able to schedule an appointment with the family doctor for Friday or the next Monday, so it's not very difficult. What else can we get for free in the public health system here, like in these public clinics? Dentist is very nice. Like I took my wisdom teeth, like 2 of them I took out in these like clinics for free. I didn't have to pay anything to remove them because my health insurance doesn't cover dentists. So or I have to go privately to a dentist, or I can go to the clinic for free and get my teeth treated, because my health insurance doesn't cover. Here in Brazil, there isn't a health insurance that covers the dentist. Usually have to pay for 2 separate health insurance, like the health insurance and the dentist insurance. It's always separated. So I don't have the dentist insurance, so when I need a dentist, I go to the neighborhood clinic and it's for free. I really liked the dentist there. She's very nice, intelligent, everything's very clean, everything's well taken care of. In my neighborhood there are 3 clinics. One of the clinics have a psychologist for free. You can go to the psychologist for free here. I thought it was so nice because I didn't know that. I discovered that last year. So yeah, like there are a lot of things you can do for free in the healthcare system. It's only difficult when you have to have, for example, image exams like MRI, like these things that are very, very, very expensive. Sometimes it takes about 3 months to get the MRI. So depending on the city, 6 months. You have to wait a while for your turn in line for the exam. But they call you, like you can go to the public clinic and give the doctor's paper, because the doctor gives you the prescription for the exam, and then you go to the clinic and you say, oh, I need to take this, to do this exam, and then the doctor puts you in this system, and then you just wait for the call, and then when they call you, they say like, oh, this day is your turn, you can go to the hospital to do this exam. I know that sometimes when the disease is very aggressive, you can't wait 6 months. I know that this is the part of our public health system that needs to improve. Some people can't wait 6 months for an exam, so it needs to be faster. But at least it exists, you know what I mean? Like, people don't need to go bankrupt to go to the hospital and get treatment, you know? So, another story here is from Francesca Sansoni and Paola Sansoni. They are brothers. You know, they are siblings. Sorry, I misspoke. They are siblings. And they talk about their family story and how they came to Brazil. It's the longest story here. They are brother and sister, and they also came to Brazil after the Second World War, because Italy was also devastated by the war, and then their parents, they were little, and their parents decided to come to Brazil to try a better life. Also, like a coincidence with Eva. Eva's, like, the first story is from Eva, and Eva's grandparents were already living in Brazil. That's why her mother decided to come here. And the same happened to Francesco and Paola's parents. Their grandparents were already living in Brazil, so their parents decided to come come live here and try a better life. And they gave a lot of details. Things were not easy because they thought that it was going to be easy to come without speaking the language and get a job, but it wasn't that easy to get a nice job. Also, their father didn't want to work as an employee. He wanted to have his own business, which is fine. So he opened a bar and then a restaurant. He was always like changing, sometimes the bar, sometimes the restaurant, and then he was like a businessman, but his business were like small businesses. So he lived a nice and decent life here, but it wasn't a very comfortable life. And they never came back to live in Italy, but they went to Italy as tourists to spend a few days there and visit their old neighborhood and old city, check on their old friends from their childhood. But they always come back. They are still living in Brazil. They don't think about moving to Europe again. They know now that Italy was restructured after the war, that things in Italy are better now compared to right after the war, but they don't see themselves living there again. It's like Brazil is their home now, which is very interesting because many Brazilians do the opposite. Many of us go to Europe to try a better life, and when you listen to stories of people like Eva, who came from Germany, and these siblings that came from Italy, we think oh my God, but we want to go there to Europe sometimes so bad to get a better life. But then sometimes it's just a matter of trying to see what we have there is already positive. I know that Brazil has many flaws. I know that mainly my biggest problem with Brazil is violence. Compared to Europe, Brazil is very violent in the sense that we have a lot of problems with drug dealers, a lot of communities that drug dealers took care of the neighborhood, and then you can't enter, mainly in big cities like Rio and São Paulo. Violence is very predominant there. So, for example, when I go to Rio, I don't really feel very comfortable to take my cell phone out. I don't take pictures when I go to Rio. I can go to Copacabana Beach, but I never take pictures there because I know that chances are people are going to steal my cell phone there, so I never take it out. You actually don't go out to Rio in the middle of the night. You don't go walking by on the beach at 3 a.m. You just don't, because you never know what's going to happen. So yeah, I think that Brazil's biggest problem is lack of safety in big cities. I think that's why I sometimes think that if I had the chance, I would move to Ireland because it's a smaller country, and I wish I could change to the countryside of Ireland, like some piece of land in Cork. I don't know, like a piece of land in Cork, a rural area, because it's safer than here. It's way safer. So I would change from, like, I would move to another country only if it's in Europe, because I like the European lifestyle. I like that their cities are built to walking or like going out by bike. You don't have to drive everywhere. You can just walk or get a bus or get the subway. So I think it's very interesting the way of life from like the Netherlands. Ireland. I lived in Ireland for 8 months and I loved it. I loved that I could walk to places. I love Ireland. So yeah, but I think that the biggest thing for me that would make me move from Brazil is the violence. Otherwise, I wouldn't move. And our economy too, even though we have a very strong economy, like compared to many countries in the world, we are not the top 10, I think. So yeah, maybe like living in a better economy where your salary, even if you make like the minimum wage or two minimum wages, you can live well, like decently. Because here, for you to get any kind of comfort, you have to get a lot of minimum wages, like 5 to 10 minimum wages gives you comfort, but less than 5 minimum wages, it doesn't give you any comfort. Like you don't have a lot of buying power here in Brazil, because most of things are imported. Electronics are imported, cars. We produce a lot of food, but then we sell the ingredients and we buy the like finished product. We supply the source material, but we have to import the finished product, which makes things very expensive. So buying power in Brazil is very low, which is another problem for me. So violence and buying power. But the other things are very nice. I really like our health system. I really like people's energy, and how we treat people from other places. And my family is here. Another person who told her story here is Saba Muselmani. She comes from Lebanon, and she came from Lebanon to get married. She married a Brazilian, so that's the reason why. And Saba is one of those people that she likes Brazil a little bit. But the biggest reason why she's still here is because of her husband. Her husband doesn't want to move to Lebanon, so she decided that she's going to live here because of him. But when she describes Brazil and how she feels, she misses her country so much. And I think that she doesn't feel very comfortable with our culture still, like even though she moved here 10 years ago. And I understand her. She comes from a country where where society lives very differently from our society, and it's very hard to completely change who you are totally, because she accepts our customs and our daily lives. It's okay, but at the same time it's difficult for her to live the same way that we live because it's so different. And I understand her, and I get that sometimes you can like living in a place, but it can still be hard to deal with the cultural difference, and it's very different for her. And and another person who told his story is Paul Siderius from New Zealand, and he is the second person here that came to Brazil as a tourist and decided to live here. Like, he came as a tourist and liked it, fell in love with the country, and then started making friends, and then he fell in love, and then he found a girlfriend, and he stayed, got married, and decided to live in Brazil. However, this book was published in 2022, and in 2022, he and his wife decided to live for a while in New Zealand so his wife can get to know his country. So he is the only person who came to Brazil, lived here for a while, and is moving back to his homeland. But the reason why he's moving back is just because of his wife. Like, he wanted to show his country to his wife and his culture, and I think it's interesting too, like, because he already knows her culture because he lived in Brazil for a long time with her. So now it's her turn to go and get to know his culture, so it's like an exchange. And the last story is from Mustafa from Turkey and Luciane from Brazil. Luciane is here because she married Mustafa, and Mustafa came from Turkey to get married to her. Like, he came to Brazil as a tourist and he met her, and then they traveled as friends for a while, and then he went back to Turkey and she went to Turkey to visit him, and then they started dating and they decided to get married, and they came to Brazil, and he's living with her up to now, and they live in Brazil. And he likes Brazil very much, but he's very rational about it. Like, he is very thankful for the country. He likes living here. He has more opportunities here than in Turkey, but he can also see the negative aspects of living in Brazil, which is, if you live in a big city, there is violence, people are very nice to foreigners, but people are not very nice with each other, and that's one of the things that I think is really weird here in Brazil. Like, we are better friends to foreigners than to each other, to other Brazilians, and it's crazy. It's very weird for me. I sometimes don't feel very... sometimes I don't feel like I belong here, because I think culturally, as a society, Brazilian values and Brazilian way of living is so different from my values and the way I wish I could live. You know what I mean? So sometimes I personally feel like I don't belong here because I feel different from other Brazilians. I feel that I am different from the general normal in quotation marks, the normal Brazilian person likes things that are so different than what I like. For example, I hate soccer. I don't like sports in general, and everybody here loves soccer. Like, I don't really listen to funk, and most people here listen to it. Like, yeah, I feel like I don't belong here sometimes, and it's weird. Like, this sensation of not belonging is weird, and he noticed that. Like, he noticed that Brazilians are very nice to foreigners, but that they are not as nice to each other as a group. Like, we are very individualist people in general. Like, nowadays here in Brazil, usually you don't know your neighbors, you don't talk to your neighbors, you just talk to people from your family, and sometimes not even to everybody, like everybody from the extended family. Sometimes you don't have contact with everybody, Of course, it's not I'm not talking that every Brazilian is like that, because again, we are more than 200 million people, so of course you will get to know very nice Brazilians who treat other Brazilians nicely, but that's not the general habit. Usually we will treat you, foreigner, better than we treat each other, mainly if you are a foreigner that come from, like, Countries that Brazilians think that are better than Brazil. For example, if you come from Europe or if you come from the USA or Canada, you will feel very welcomed here. I don't understand why that is. I think that, it's a chronic thing here in Brazil. We tend to, like, when I say we, I'm not talking about myself specifically because I feel like I don't belong. I feel like I'm very different. But usually, Brazilian people value things from other countries more than we value our own stuff. So yeah, it's weird. It's a long conversation. I didn't get into a lot of detail because it's like a very difficult topic to talk about and to understand if you're not Brazilian. But yeah, it is weird. And I think that if you live in a country which is your like home country, your homeland, and you don't feel like you belong, I think that you will understand what I mean. Sometimes you notice some values and some cultural things that everybody does, but you think it's so weird and you think like, oh, I don't believe that everybody does it, but yeah. And so yeah, it's crazy to think like that. But moving on, I really liked this country. Oh my god, I'm going crazy. I really liked this book. I love listening to stories from people from other countries, and also it's nice to know other people's perspective of your country when they were born in a different country, so they know how to compare and give a very objective and lucid opinion. So I really enjoyed reading. It's a very short book, and yes, nice read. Many things to think about after reading this book. Yeah, it made me think a lot and reflect a lot about why I feel like I don't belong, why I feel like, sometimes I don't act like everybody else. Why? And then some of these foreigners here, they could pinpoint some of the reasons why, because, in their country it's like this, and I act sometimes more like people from their country than people from Brazil. Yeah. So, yeah, that's it. I think I could summarize a little bit the book for you guys. I hope you liked, and I hope I could make myself understood. I hope I didn't, say anything offensive or anything. If I said, I'm sorry, it wasn't my intention. I recommend the book if you have the chance to read it one day. And yeah, so thank you very much for watching this video. If you liked this video, give me a thumbs up because it helped me a lot. Subscribe to the channel if you feel like it, and we will talk again next videos. Okay, bye bye.